Okay, so we are now recording. Good evening, everyone from up London. We've got someone from London, we've got someone from Germany, someone from Australia, someone from the States. So we really are all over the world this evening, or this morning, I should say, for Nicole. Thank you for joining us. I've been so excited about this. This is something that I've really wanted to do since joining the group. You know, we all have a love for books, we all have a love for Michael Jackson, and as soon as I joined this group, I really felt a warmth in the group. I love the fact that we share the same passion, and I just really wanted to do something to add to that, and sort of have us all come together reading the books that we love, and given an opportunity for us to discuss it and you know, share our views. So I'm really excited about this evening. And just a big thank you as well to Steph, Tammy and Jeanette for giving us all this opportunity. There's been a lot of discussions going on behind the scenes, both with Jeanette, Tammy and Steph, and between us four here today. So it's been quite a lot of work to set this up, but hopefully all goes okay, and hopefully there'll be a demand for another one next month, which I'll talk about towards the end. I chose this evening to record this. Today's the 29th of August. You guys are going to be watching this on the 5th of September. But I really wanted to record this on Michael's birthday. I thought it was a really nice way to mark the occasion. There's lots and lots of stuff going on today. We've got the Spike Lee block party, which some of us were watching before we started the discussions here tonight. We've got Steph, Tammy and Jeanette, who are doing the interview about Michael's humanitarian side. I believe that's with Paul Dwyer, so good luck with that. Hope that all went okay. And of course we've got Siren and Brenda, who are doing their 14 kilometre walk in Michael's memory. So there's so much going on, as always, on Michael's birthday, and you know, it's just nice that us four can get together and, you know, do something ourselves. So let's introduce the panel. So my name's Emma, I'm in London. We have Daniela, who's in Germany. Where are you in Germany, Daniela?
Southwest of Germany.
Okay, and you had quite a special reason for wanting to participate in this, didn't you? You had quite a personal reason.
Yeah, of course. First, I'm a member of the book club, and as you all can see, I'm the only non-native speaker here in this panel, and I've seen lots of videos and everything, and it's always the native speaker. And I really wanted to encourage people by being an example. My English is far from very good, and I struggle to understand accents, and I want to also voice my opinion, and maybe it's not the most eloquent way I'm going to do it, but I really want to set an example and encourage people who are not native speakers to take part, because this is what you also see in the Facebook group. There are lots of members from all the countries, but you don't hear them and they don't write. But I know from the German fan groups, they always are very interested what is going on, and they go to big lengths to understand what is said and what is written, with going through translating machines or whatever, and I'm very often getting asked, what do they say? Or, oh, it's in English again. So I'm leaning myself very much out of the window now, and I'm trying to do this for you guys out there.
Fantastic. And you know, how courageous of you to do that. You know, I'm a French and Spanish teacher actually, and you know, I don't think that I would have the confidence to engage in, you know, a long conversation about any topic in that language, a language that wasn't my own. So I think that you're you know, people should admire you for what you're doing. I've seen lots of people commenting you know, in their native language, Spanish or French, and I think that people should do that. I think some people don't comment because, oh well, everyone speaks English in this group, and you know, but you know, comment. Even if you have to comment in your native language, there's a translate button right underneath, and you know, we want to hear your views. So if you are commenting this evening, please, whatever language you speak, please make sure that you're commenting and getting involved in the conversation. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, even speaking here, I thought the worst what can happen is I'm not finding the words, and then I dance what I want to say, no?
Exactly.
Okay.
Or gesticulate. You're European. Europeans, you know, they use their hands, right?
Okay, let's see.
Nicole, what's the time in Brisbane right now?
It's almost 6:30 a.m. So I was up before 6 to get started by 6.
Wow, that's some dedication. And why did you want to, you know, what gave you that dedication to get up so early to get involved? Why did you want to get involved this evening?
Well, I mean, it's quite common being in Australia to have different time zones, obviously. So I'm usually at an awkward time compared to other countries. So, but it's Michael Jackson, so it's always worth a little bit of effort.
Sure is, especially on his birthday.
Yeah, I just love the idea of an old-fashioned type book club type discussion as well. So, yeah.
Well, excellent, and thank you for joining us. Casey, what's your kind of story of being a Michael Jackson fan? When did it all start for you? I love your posters, love your t-shirt, love your necklace. I think you said you've got a bracelet on, a ring on. She's fully in full attire for this evening.
This is actually fairly normal for me. My very first memory of music was the Jackson 5. And then it went on after that. The first song I remember absolutely falling in love with was Thriller.
Yeah.
And then it kind of spiraled from there.
Yeah.
So
I think that's how it's happened for a lot of us, actually. Yeah. I think that we hear one song or one album, something just, you know, captures us, and that's it. It's just.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember being very small listening to the ABC and Rockin' Robin.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, then as I got older, and then, you know, found Thriller and Beat It and Billie Jean, and goes on and on and on. And then it got even cuter. My daughter does hip hop dance, and they actually did a dance routine to ABC.
Amazing.
It was really cool.
What, like a remix version or the original version?
It was the original version.
Oh, wow. That's some creativity right there.
It was very, very cool.
Amazing. I love that, you know, whenever you speak to a fan, and I know, Nicole, we've done, you know, a Zoom meeting when we, Tammy, Steph and Jeanette invited some of the fans on. And, you know, I love the fact that we've all got our own individual stories, and I could just listen to people's stories for forever about how they got involved with Michael, what made them fall in love with Michael. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of hearing more about your own, you know, personal experiences today. Before we go into the discussions and the book and everything, I just want to remind everybody that, you know, as we've discussed, we're all in different time zones. All four of us have got, you know, our own lives, families, things going on at home. So some of us may be kind of popping out and popping back in at different times. So just kind of bear with us while that happens. We're still going to keep going. Even if it's just me, I'll just keep talking for 10 minutes or so. Okay, so the book that I chose for the first of these sessions was, of course, Moonwalk. I kind of felt like that was an obvious choice. It's, you know, the only real autobiography by Michael, so for me it was kind of the obvious one to go to first. This is my copy, which I'm sure a lot of you have seen on the group. I did the boomerang video of it with all my post-its, which there are loads. And I also did write my story, which I'll just briefly remind you of. I bought this, I think I was probably about 8 at a boot sale, which is, you know, that's the name for it in the UK. I think in America you call it a flea market. What do you call it in Australia, Nicole?
We have flea markets and boot sales, so they're
different. I assumed a flea market was a boot sale.
Well, flea markets are not always out of like cars, if that makes sense. Sometimes they set up little stalls in a flea market in Australia. So, and then I got mine in a garage sale. We call it a garage sale, but I think America might call it a yard sale. So slightly different terms for similar things. Yeah,
another barrier we're going to get over this evening. But yeah, I bought mine at a boot sale for 50 pence. This was, oh my God, probably 1994 or something. And I did actually read it when I was about 10, but I haven't read it since. And I'm now 33, and I've just reread it in the last 2 weeks, and it's been amazing to reread. And obviously I've interpreted so many things completely differently to I did as a child. So you know, I've really thoroughly enjoyed the opportunity to get to reread it. Daniela, which copy have you got?
Well, I got the 2009 reissue. I bought one in '88, or yeah, when it came out. But then I did a lot of house moving from one continent to the other, and I always have to decide what I'm going to take and what I'm not going to take. So that was not one of my treasures I would take, but 2009 I decided I should read it again, and then I got this copy.
Amazing.
And it's with me since. I did not move yet.
Well, hopefully they'll keep, you know, bringing out new release versions. Then every time you move, you can just buy another one. Casey, you've got the new release version as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I do.
Nice. Is there anything different about the new release version?
Yeah, it has a foreword from Barry Gordy, which the original one did not have, and it has an afterword, or how you call that, from the person actually editing this, like not the ghostwriter, from the person who worked with Jacqueline on this book, who worked, like the last work done on this book she did with Michael. Yeah. Because I think we're going to get to this point, the ghost writing did not work out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so this is different. This is absolutely different. Yeah. And it's good. It's also the pre-word is good and the afterword is good. Yeah. So
I feel like I need to buy the new version now. I have the original version. I feel like I'm missing out. Nicole, you've got I love a beautiful version. I mean, the original is obviously amazing, but look at that. And what really smacked me, Nicole posted a picture of this on the group the other day, and I saw it for the first time, and straight away I said black and red.
This is the new version.
Oh, right? You've got it. That's the new version. That's what it looks like.
That's the 2009 issue.
I've not seen it. And straight away I just thought black and red, that's Michael. They were, you know, two of his favourite colours, and I love the gold autograph on the front as well.
Yeah. Well, I bought mine
really
in,
cool.
I think I got mine in about 1992, so they must have started doing the black and red fairly early on. And as I said before, I got mine in a garage sale, so it was secondhand. I only paid a couple of dollars for it, and so it was already a couple of years old at that point in time. So it's I'm curious whether all the pictures and things are all the same in all the different issues.
Yeah, that would be really interesting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Just the first few pages and the last few pages changed. Yeah.
So that's the thing. This is the original version, and I love this because this always reminds me of love it. This always reminds me of you know, the American series that they did, An American Dream, and you know the series starts with this, doesn't it? It goes through all of his awards and his stuff, and this is what I always think of when I see that. Shari actually wrote in to say that she loves the way the book is so personalised with the autograph, which obviously on my version, it's the autograph is inside. But obviously you guys have still got the autograph, it's just on the outside. So this is in the original. I don't know if this is in your copy as well.
Yeah, it's the same as mine.
Yeah, but she said that she loves the fact that you've got the autograph on the inside, and then of course you've got the beautiful self-portrait that he did as well, which is it's quite rare to have that in a book, so it's kind of nice little touch there. But yeah, I'm so excited to be discussing this. So what I thought we'd start with, before we go into some of the discussion points, and there's a lot, is I thought it'd be quite fun to do a little quiz. So the questions are based on things that were mentioned in the book, but even if you didn't get a chance to read the book, or if you read it a long time ago, probably a lot of these questions you'd probably be able to answer anyway. They're quite, you know, they're questions that you would probably know anyway. So if you are commenting this evening on the live chat on the watch party, please don't comment the answers because obviously it's going to ruin it for everybody else. So if you just get a pen and paper, or you can do it on the notes section of your phone or something, there's 10 questions and I'm going to give you the answers at the end of the session. So you're going to have to watch all the way to the end to get the answers. So it's just a nice bit of fun to start. So question number 1. How old is Michael at the time of writing Moonwalk? How old is Michael at the time of writing Moonwalk? So if you know the answer, just make a note of it on a piece of paper, on your phone, and keep it until the end of the session, and then we'll go through the answers. Question number 2. What was Joe Jackson's group called? What was Joe Jackson's group called? Number 3. What instrument is played at the start of I'll Be There? What instrument is played at the start of I'll Be There? So again, all of these answers are directly in the book, but I know that there will be people watching who haven't had a chance to read. So just think about that little tune at the start and see if you can work it out. Number 4. What did Michael say was coincidental about Blame It on the Boogie? What did Michael say was coincidental about Blame It on the Boogie? Number 5. Why was the song This Place Hotel not named Heartbreak Hotel, which is of course the lyrics of the chorus? Why was This Place Hotel not named Heartbreak Hotel? Number 6. How many Grammys did Off the Wall win? How many Grammys did Off the Wall win? Number 7. What was the original name for the Off the Wall album? What was the original name for the Off the Wall album? So before they decided on Off the Wall, it was actually going to be named something else. What was the original name for the Off the Wall album? Number 8. What was the title of the song that Michael wrote for Diana Ross? What was the title of the song that Michael wrote for Diana Ross? Number 9. Now this is mentioned in the book, but the book was written in 1988. We're now in 2020, so the answer is going to be different than what's in the book, but hopefully we should know anyway. According to the Guinness Book of World Records, how many copies of Thriller have been sold officially? I know there's a bit of a debate, but according to the Guinness Book of World Records, how many copies of Thriller have been sold worldwide? And finally, number 10, what was the title of the Jackson 5's first recorded song? What was the name or the title of the Jackson 5's first recorded song? So we'll come back to those at the end for the answers. Now I'm going to say one more thing before we get going on our discussion points. You know, as we can see here today, there's people from all over the world watching in. There will be people watching whose native language is not English. Unfortunately, I do have a very strong accent from London. I'm going to really try to tone that down and speak, you know, the Queen's English. But if you need me to clarify anything that I've said, please just comment. I am watching with you. I'm discussing things with you live on the watch party. That's the beauty of not recording live. I get to record this and then come and join you in the live chat. So if there is anything that you know, you haven't understood about something that any of us have said, please comment and I'll reply to you and try and sort of explain it a bit better. But I will try and speak a little bit more slowly and try and, you know, enunciate properly. Okay, so let's get on to our first discussion point of the book, which was when I first opened the book, obviously after you've got through the self-portrait and the autograph, you've got the dedication to Fred Astaire, which is amazing. You first come to 3 quotes. You come to one from Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. This is obviously in the original book, the original copy. You've got one from Thomas Edison and you've got one from John Lennon. And the first thing that I felt when I read those quotes were, why were those 3 quotes chosen? You know, Michael would have chosen those 3 quotes for a reason. And I really felt that he chose those because what those 3 quotes were portraying was what was most important to Michael for us to know. That's really what I thought. The first thing that he wants people to see when they open the book or read were these 3 quotes, which basically were summarizing his work ethic, how hard he works, his dedication to being the best, the fact that he was a perfectionist, and the fact that his talent and the way that he writes songs are a gift from God. You know, he talks about, I think actually it was a quote from John Lennon, not directly about Michael Jackson, but again, Michael chose that quote to include in his book, so he felt that it was relevant to him. And talking about the fact that he is just a channel, you know, through which music is created, but you know, the fact that it comes from above, it's channeled through him and then presented to us, the audience. I just wondered how you guys, you know, interpreted the quotes. Do you have your own ideas about that? Obviously, there's a bit of a controversial thing with Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. I read that she actually didn't want to write anything for the book. I think she was the editor, or she was involved in the publishing company, and she said, no, I don't do that. I'm just involved in the creation of the books. I don't want to write, you know, anything about Michael. And I think from what I've read, Michael was quite insistent, or maybe it was the publishing company, you know, we're not going to release this book unless you provide a quote, which is really interesting. I don't know if any of you know any more about that story.
No, I know exactly this, and I know that she agreed only to do 3 paragraphs, and this is exactly the 3 paragraphs. Yeah,
right.
I know the deal would not have happened. Yeah, whatever.
Interesting. Another mystery.
I think you captured it really good. So it's not just something you just write and get it over with, you know.
Yeah.
She captured it really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Daniela, do you have any other thoughts on the quotes? How do you interpret those? Why do you think he chose those 3 in particular? Well, he didn't choose Jacqueline, but you know, he chose the other 2.
Yeah, the Thomas Edison one, when I read this, I have automatically in my ear what he said, learn from the great and do it better. Yeah. Yeah. This is what's written here from Thomas Edison in 1 sentence. Yeah. Yeah. The way Michael would phrase it. Yeah. Learn from the great and do it better. Yeah. Yeah.
And Casey, what about you?
Honestly, I think they both describe him almost perfectly, like they're speaking to him. I can see in my mind, I can understand exactly why he picked them. They describe him completely.
It's almost as if they're writing it about him.
Yes.
And you know, I mean, I actually don't know the context for which these quotes were written, but I mean, there's no mention of Michael in either of them. So I'm assuming that, you know, they're not written about him, but they were. It's like he also said to them, oh, you know, I want a quote written for me for my book. and they provided these quotes, which, like you say, just describe him perfectly, don't they?
Yeah, Michael would phrase it different. The John Lennon quote, he would say like, well, where do you get your inspiration or whatever? And it just it comes from God. I do nothing.
Yes.
Also, like very much like this, yeah.
And I know Michael had a real affiliation to John Lennon, didn't he?
Yes.
So, you know, they obviously connected emotionally and spiritually, and they obviously felt very similarly about their work and about their purpose, actually, you know, on Earth. Yeah. The next thing that really struck me when I was reading the book is on the very first page, when, you know, the autobiography starts. So on the old book, this is on page 5. You know, he talks about his love for storytelling, and books is mentioned immediately, which I thought was really amazing, you know, and you know, had to have a mention on a page about a book club. You know, he talks about his love for storytelling. It shows that he's an avid reader. He says that there are very few books written on the art of storytelling. So the fact that he says that, you know, he obviously is an avid reader. He's obviously tried to find lots of books on storytelling. And, you know, he knows that there aren't many. There's another quote a bit later on about his love for reading. And this was in relation to his tutor when he was younger and he was being homeschooled by Rose.
Yeah, that she installed the love for
books.
Yes, yeah.
Exactly. And, you know, they used to go to whatever city they were in, they used to go to different bookshops.
Yeah.
And so his love of books obviously started when he was really young. Have you guys read any books that he particularly liked? You know, I know as a group we've thrown quite a lot out there about books that we definitely know that he had possession of, or books that we know he read. Casey, have you read any books that Michael was a fan of?
I mean, I've read Old Man of the Sea and a lot of the classics. So more than likely, because I've been reading, I'm also a very avid reader. So probably many.
And Nicole, we were just talking about Michael's love of reading, which is obviously very apt for our, you know, our group, the Michael Jackson Book Club. Have you read any books that you know that Michael possessed or that he really enjoyed?
It's not something I've ever kind of gone down that path, and I've spent a lot of time on music that inspired him and that he liked to listen to, and same with films and TV, but I haven't gone down that path of reading, you know, his favorite books, except one that I know I have read, To Kill a Mockingbird. I remember being really excited in high school reading that, because he mentions it in Moonwalk. He mentions the movie, I think, not the book, but I know he loved that book. So that's one I know I've read. I might have read more, but it's not an area that I have delved into. I think it might be, now that I'm more into books, it might be something I do in the future.
It's hard when you don't have a lot of time, and you know, you're kind of using your time really to read books on Michael, and so to try and find time to read books that he enjoyed is, you know, is hard. Daniela, what about you? Have you read any books that you know that he loved or that he owned?
Yeah, I read Jonathan Livingston Seagull, not knowing that he read that too, but I know the book now, and I can very much understand that he must have loved it, because it reflects him too. Yeah, the struggles he had. Yeah. And then, and this is something I wish I would have never done. On the internet, I found like some pages where they put photographs of books from Michael Jackson with writings of him, you know, what he scribbled into the books. He really worked with the books. He made a lot of notes, and I came across these 48 laws of power. So, and this is one of these improve yourself books. So, and then coincidentally, I found an audio book, and the clicked, okay, this is something Michael read, and I went into this audio book, and I was just like, wow, I wouldn't even like to have that book in my bookshelf. I found it horrible, and it just, I think it brought me in some alley I didn't want to go. Yeah.
And that's something that Michael owned.
Yeah. It is like how to manipulate people. Yeah. Make you a master in manipulating people. Tells you something like don't trust your friends, and I need my glasses here. Never put trust in your friends, or learn not to trust your enemies, and conceal your intentions. And what he really highly liked, always say less than necessary. What we talked already about, because this is one point what Michael liked, he should have done different. Always say less than necessary. He should have explained himself more, and things would have been hopefully better than they turned out. Yeah, and so I was really shocked by that book. I did not really get deep to it. I got until law 9 or whatever, and then I said, this is a manipulative book. And then I went into some reviews in the internet, and yeah. So no, it's Machiavelli. It's how you manipulate people. But on the other hand, what you got to know from Michael, yeah, maybe he could rely to this because he felt so much manipulated from people that he thought, okay, now I have a piece which tells me what I have to do to not get manipulated. Maybe I understand the manipulation now. I don't know. As I said, I did not want to go further in this. Well,
you know, the more that I read about Michael, and the more that I find out about him, I really feel that his purpose, or that his main focus in life was, and I mean this like in a positive way, because you know the word manipulation has a very negative connotation, okay, but I think that his aim was to manipulate people. I think that he wanted to get into people's heads. I think that he wanted people to be affected by his music. And I think that he did everything. I think he dedicated his whole life to making sure that he did that. And I think that probably is a form of manipulation. I don't think it's manipulating people in the negative sense, but I do think that he probably did do a lot of research about, you know, how to get in there and how to take over people's minds, take over people's bodies. I mean, I know that I've spoken to Steph before about, you know, attending his concert. I've attended a lot of concerts, and I've never attended a concert like Michael's. The way that the fans reacted to him, the way that the fans were almost like not in control of their own bodies. And I think that that's all part of the control that he had over us, and I think that that was an intentional thing.
Yeah, do you think he tried to revert that into something positive? Well, I could explain something. Yeah.
Well, talking of control, the next thing that I wanted to talk about was actually his lack of control growing up. One of the things that was really prevalent in his book, and that I feel he spoke a lot about, was his lack of control by his father, by Motown, by various people. He, for the first half of the book, he quite often spoke about people literally taking over his life. He didn't have a say in anything. His dad would, you know, say, well, you have to do everything the way that I say. You dress this way, you sing this way, you perform this way, you rehearse this way. And I think that it was a very similar kind of way of life when he was at Motown. I mean, just to throw a couple of quotes that he said on page 6, when you're a show business child, you really don't have the maturity to understand a great deal of what is going on around you. People make a lot of decisions concerning your life when you're out of the room. On page 9, he talks about really identifying with child stars. On page 33, like I said before, he talks about Joe's control, the fact that everything had to be the way Dad planned it, you know, in his words. what I was interested to know from you is whether you feel that Joe's insistence on total control over his sons was an opportunity to exploit them, or whether as a father he was trying to protect them. He just genuinely felt that he knew best. Nicole, what do you think?
I quite strongly think it was protective rather than exploitive. I'm quite I wouldn't say I'm a fan of Joe, but I think he gets a really bad rap from a lot of Michael Jackson fans, and I think that a lot of people view Joe with a filter of negativity, and it doesn't allow them to see some of the positives that he did.
Well, thank you very much, Nicole, for these words.
Do you agree, Daniela?
I think when I first, I read this book a couple of times when I was a teenager, when I was going through my teenage obsessed years, which probably never really ended. But I did read it a few times, and back in the 90s, there wasn't this constant talk about physical abuse that they went through. You didn't hear that much of it in the early 90s. You knew that it happened, but again, the times were different in the 90s to what they are now. And I know we spoke about this before on the book club, that you do need to consider the culture of the time and the way that they were brought up. I know I'm slightly going off on a different tangent here, but Joe's going back to his control of the group. I see it as him kind of being a part of the group, and he did a lot of teaching, and a lot of his control and was all about, the planning and the preparing. There's a quote from the book where he says something along the lines of that talent means nothing unless you plan and prepare. And I think part of that control was about teaching them and about getting them to be perfect and getting them polished and experienced. And there's a lot of things that Michael refers to through the book about being how polished they were compared to other performers, and how experienced they were with holding a microphone at the talent shows when all the other amateurs weren't. And they had that experience because of Joe's insistence.
And I always say you have to see also the time Joe invested in his children. He came home from a double shift in the mill, and then he still would sit there. I guess 99% of other parents, of other fathers, would go to the local pub. No, he rehearsed with them. Every evening. Every evening, to make them better, to see their talent. Yes, to hit a child is perceived really different today. But I'm born 65, and I know it from my own home. There was the sentence: if you love your child, you
cruel to be kind. I guess.
Say, no?
Like cruel to be kind, you're like, if you love them, you'll discipline them and you'll teach them.
If you love your child, you discipline it. And I can remember my parents doing that, and they didn't do it a lot compared to what I know from my friends' houses. Today you would say no, impossible, whatever, but this was like not too long ago. You would get disciplined by your teacher in school. So you have to transfer that. You cannot put the standards of today down for this.
I think that's a really good point.
In terms of whether his control of their music side of things, I think Michael does reference there's one quote that I've got here from page 17. My father did always protect us, and that's no small feat. And then he goes on to talk several times about how well Joe did in terms of their business interactions, and how fortunate he felt as a child star to have his business affairs taken care of, and how Joe taught him to invest wisely and didn't just take all the money for himself. He mentions a lot of those things in a very positive way. And I think some fans, as I said, if you look at it with a filter on of negativity, you don't pick up on those subtleties and the positive ways that he does speak about his father.
And also I said we always have to take into consideration Michael made up with his dad. He had a good relationship with him afterward. And if I recall that right from the AEG court, yeah, that Prince also stated that one of the last things his dad said to him, that get Joe, he knows what to do. No?
Yeah.
You would not say that if you hate your father. And I think during adolescence, and as a young adult, right, I know I had periods where I really hated my mom, yeah, because you break free and they won't let you because they still protect you, yeah. And I think this is in every family, a certain point where it comes that. But also with Michael, it was done in public again, you know? Yeah. So I think we should not be the ones to judge on this, no. Or to
Casey,
judge.
what do you think? How do you see Michael's relationship with Joe?
I mean, honestly, I think Joe did a great job of protecting them. He protected their business and made sure they weren't, you know, companies weren't stealing from them, that they weren't being taken advantage of, basically. I mean, if they came from Gary where there was a lot of gangs, he had to be tough. He had to keep them all together so nothing happened to them. Yeah. I mean, I will agree that I think a lot of fans especially only see the negative parts that have been said, but they don't look at the other side of that either. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, you cannot put today's views on it. You cannot.
No, times have changed so much.
It's 50 years ago,
Yeah. And I think now we have so much, you know, children are so protected nowadays. You know, I mean, I know that there's still lots of exploitation, lots of abuse, but, you know, it's really kind of hammered into us all the time on the news, on social media about, you know, what you can do if you feel that someone is being abused, and it's absolutely unacceptable. And, you know, in lots of countries now, you're not allowed to smack your child. And so I think if you've grown up in this kind of generation where it is, you know, deemed to be socially completely unacceptable and actually illegal, I think when you kind of see stories like Michael's, where he talks about, you know, being hit with a switch and all that kind of stuff, and even the emotional abuse, not just the physical abuse, but, you know, the very hard parenting that Joe demonstrated, I think it's very easy to see that with, you know, 2020 eyes. And, you know, there are lots of things that it doesn't make it right, but there are lots of things from back then that, you know, like you say, were very different. And what another key point to make is they were being raised in Gary, Indiana, which was poverty stricken, gangs everywhere. You know, you've got 6 boys. I mean, you know, the chances are one of them is going to fall in the wrong crowd, right? So from that perspective, you know, as a parent, I think you can kind of empathize a little bit. When I read the book, one of the things that jumped out to me was a lot has been made about Joe's physical abuse of Michael over the years. And so I think subconsciously I was really expecting Michael to write quite a lot about that in his book. And he writes one paragraph.
Yeah, he does.
He writes quite a lot about his dad. Yeah. And like you say, he writes quite a lot of positive things. Yeah. There are some kind of more negative things. He talks about his descriptions of his dad, I felt, were portraying their relationship as more of a business relationship. You know, I think he felt that he had more of a business relationship with his father rather than, you know, a parent and son relationship. And, you know, I always find it quite interesting that he dedicates all his albums to his mum. And given that his dad had such an influence on his success, I always find that quite interesting. But I think one paragraph from the whole book, he spoke about his dad being, I don't actually think he even uses this term, but, you know, I'm paraphrasing and kind of putting words in his mouth, but he talks about his dad being physically abusive. One paragraph in the whole book. And I look at how much has been made of that over the last 30, 40, 50 years. And to Michael at that point, it was worth one paragraph, you know. That really surprised me. I think I really felt that he was going to talk a lot about it in his book. So, yeah, I don't know.
I think it's been made more of an issue as time's gone on. Like, I remember being a huge fan through the 90s.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that was as talked about as much as it was in the following decade, and then in the last 10 years it's probably been spoken about even more than it was in the previous decade. It's kind of snowballed as a bigger and bigger issue amongst fans.
I can vividly remember in 1988 when this book was issued and published. It was like so much talked about. The most talked about in this book was what he wrote here about his father. And in this new afterword, this is also stated that Michael had because it was so blown up, you know, that little paragraph was so put out of proportion that Michael had, I don't know if he wrote or he called Joe and apologized for it, and the explanation of it was from him, I did not write it, somebody else did.
Yeah. I think, you know what, I think that his relationship with his father is always going to be something that divides the fan community, because, you know, half of them see Joe as the devil, and, you know, I do understand that. I think that Joe's treatment of Michael actually caused a lot of the issues that Michael had throughout his life. I think that Michael was a very sensitive person by nature. His brothers didn't quite react in the same way. It didn't affect them in quite the same way. But, you know, just because it didn't affect them, it doesn't mean that it didn't affect Michael. And we know that he was a very sensitive person. Yeah. He's a very empathetic person. He craved the love of his father. And, you know, I do think that Joe really did affect him emotionally. And I think that impacted actually on a lot of things over his life. But I don't think that it was necessarily all bad. And, you know, Daniela, you've given some great examples of, you know, where Michael's been in trouble and he's called for his dad, you know, and there's the famous picture of Michael coming out of the courthouse or going into the courthouse in 2005, and he's hanging on.
How many parents would do that?
Yeah.
I really, no, they would say, okay.
Yeah. What you mean if their child had been accused of that crime? Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. I mean, I think a good share of distance. Yeah.
There was a couple of comments that came in from people who are hopefully watching with us. So Betty Lou wrote in to say that she found in the book Michael was very forgiving when he wrote about things that he didn't like, such as his father's abuse. So maybe she feels that actually, you know, it did impact Michael more than Michael wanted to portray in his book, and that he just maybe kind of held it down. Jackie says that Joseph saw them as performers first and sons second. I think that might actually be a quote from Jermaine's book, which is really interesting. And Angie Huff, she wrote something really, really interesting. She was lucky enough to be present at the Oxford Union speech that Michael did, which is, I mean, wow, what an experience that would have been. And she felt that when he wrote that in 1988, he was probably still very angry. I mean, he was young, you know, I can't say his age because that's one of the quiz questions, but he was still very young at that time. And she felt that had he written those things as an older man with a wiser head, more life experience, more time to deal with what happened as a child, that maybe he would have written about him differently. And not that he condoned the way that Joseph treated him, but that as an adult and maybe even as a parent, when Michael became a parent, that he kind of accepted Joseph. He understood him more. He accepted that that's who Joseph was as a person, you know. I think it's going to be always one of those topics that divides the fans.
Yeah, I made a mark here for myself at 152, page 152. Yeah, this is what I think was the breaking point in the relationship. You know, when Michael tried to break loose and not to work with his dad anymore. Yeah, because she writes here, did it change the relationship between me and my father? I don't know if it did in his heart, but it certainly did in mine. So that was more maybe a bad handling on side of Joe when he wanted to go. But on the other hand, there was Joe having to look for the rest of the family, the rest of the group too. And he knew if they lose Michael, they just lose it. So maybe if he would have been a little bit more understanding in this or try to act more balanced, that would have solved differently. But yeah.
I think Joe probably
very easy to say now from our point, no? Yeah.
Yeah, I think Joe probably felt quite betrayed by Michael when he did that. And you know, someone else who we know felt betrayed at some point by Michael was Jermaine. And I'm always really interested in Michael's relationship with his brothers, because again, I feel like it's something that really divides. People either really love the brothers or they feel that, you know, they were not a good support for Michael. Casey, how do you see Michael's relationship with his brothers in particular?
I know, I mean, from everything that I've read and everything, I know him and Jermaine were kind of off and on. During, you know, their earlier life, they were a little bit closer. As they got older, they tended to drift apart, and Jermaine always thought Michael was a competition, who is better, and always wanted to beat him instead of necessarily kind of supporting. I mean, he even wrote the diss track,
Word to the Bad, which
I actually have Jermaine's book.
Oh my God, it's so disrespectful, that song. I couldn't believe it. I only found out about that a couple of years ago.
So angry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I know the first time I heard about this song was when I read Jermaine's book.
Yeah.
I have Jermaine's book as well.
Yeah, but there also, like, it's portrayed the other view of the relationship, you know. He writes there why he did that, because he was so angry and so upset. He moves his whole family in the south of America because he wants to work with these new producers, and tells Michael about it. And that's the way Jermaine writes it. Yeah, Michael has nothing better to do than to snatch these producers to ask them to Neverland.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is, I think this is also like, this is this is brothers. This
it's constant bickering.
Rivalry.
Yeah, rivalry,
Yeah.
sibling rivalry. Yeah, of course.
They've been very close, and they've been very, very close. They share a room, and they've been the closest to us. And it's also, if it's any couples or the ones who you love the most, the ones you can hurt the most. Yeah. I mean, if I don't care about anybody, why should I hurt it? Yeah. Yeah.
Nicole, we were just talking about Michael's relationship with his brothers, in particular Jermaine. You know, some fans feel very negatively towards him because, you know, obviously he's done things to betray Michael, but we're kind of speaking on the flip side that Michael has obviously done things to, you know, betray from the brothers' perspective. He's betrayed them as well. I mean, how do you see the brothers and their kind of support of Michael? And, you know, do you feel that that they were kind of a good form of support for him, or do you feel that actually they were quite selfish and didn't always act in his best interest?
I think certainly up to the point where this book is written, you see they had that very close connection. I mean, to the point where Michael he wanted to move away and do his own solo thing, but he was upset about having to move away and not have that connection with his brothers. So there was obviously a very strong foundation, I suppose, for their relationships as they grew up and into their 20s, or into his 20s, I should say. Again, I think the same as Joe getting a hard time from fans so does Jermaine, that's maybe not as justified as what, like I just heard a few of you saying there are some things that Michael maybe did that weren't in agreement with Jermaine and vice versa. So certainly Michael even made a point several times of, you know, when he talked about his brothers, he would specifically state Jermaine. And I know that was because of the separation when they moved away from Motown, and once Jermaine came back, you know, it was including Jermaine, but there was so many times even after that where he would speak about his brothers and state Jermaine several times. So I think it's, as Daniela might have been saying before, they were possibly the closest because they shared the room in all the tours and all that sort of stuff. So maybe being the closest, you have that more bickering and more of a volatile relationship at times. And I think just as Joe gets a bad rap from fans, I think Jermaine does as well, that maybe isn't as necessary as it is.
I think that Jermaine is kind of like, you know, Jermaine was the big deal, right? Before Michael came along and took over being the lead singer of the Jackson 5, it was Jermaine. And so I think throughout his life, Jermaine has kind of played like the role of second Michael, if you like. You know, and I was speaking to some fans earlier on the group, and you know, Jermaine was the one that released the book, and Jermaine was the one who gave the press conference when Michael died. And I feel quite conflicted about Jermaine, because those things could be deemed as, you know, positive things, and maybe he was doing those things because he was the closest to Michael, or maybe, you know, some fans believe that, you know, Jermaine was any chance to kind of grab the limelight. And I just think, like Joseph, Jermaine is always going to be that one in particular that really divides opinion amongst the fans. Some love him, some, you know, don't have any time for him.
I think it was both. It was like really big, going out, organizing things, being the one. I mean, it must have been hard to stand in front of the press and tell them, Michael is that. I mean, I would not like my whole life to change with him, yeah. But then you see these interviews, and always he starts to cry in TV about this is when the showman breaks through, you know. I mean, also Jermaine has to live and make a living, yeah. And I think this is also a major point people keep forgetting, you know. In the relationship of the brothers, yeah, they've all been full musicians before Michael showed up, yeah, and they are full musicians and good musicians on their own. Mm-hmm. But as soon as Michael stepped into the limelight, yeah, even you can be as good a musician, you can be a musician as good as you want, yeah. They were always compared.
Yeah.
And they always took the smaller straw.
Yeah.
Like your value is nothing.
Yeah, I think it's
yeah.
It's always Jermaine's a very interesting one. I'll be honest, I'm still unsure. I get very conflicted about Jermaine, and his book is definitely one that I want to reread. I read it when it first came out, but I think my view of him was quite tainted, so I was quite biased in my opinion as I read it. I think I might try and read that again. And
yeah, you should, because I see not everything, but I see a few things I see differently now. You know? There's always action and reaction.
Jermaine's book's one of my favorites.
Really?
Yeah, I absolutely
It's a really
love it.
sweet book.
I think it's beautiful. I cried my way through that book so much.
That's not like you, Nicole.
Pardon?
That's not like you. You didn't cry last time, did you?
I found it quite emotional, and I think, you know, his love for his brother certainly shines through in that book. But in the same as how I said, you can, you know, view things with a certain filter. I think sometimes we need to stop and think about things from the brothers' perspectives. I mean, imagine being as amazing musicians that they were, but being kind of nothing compared to Michael. I mean, I don't say that lightly. I just they were all incredible, but they sort of fell into the shadows because he was extraordinary. So that must have been hard for them to deal with. And if there was some jealousy, that that's understandable. And I think sometimes people don't think of it that way.
And of course, something that is a huge factor is that everything that they did, every argument that they had, was publicized. You know, probably, I mean, obviously we're talking in extreme circumstances about, stealing producers and stuff. I mean, that stuff doesn't happen to normal people. But the kind of arguments that they had and the kind of problems that they had, that stuff goes on behind closed doors all the time. And, you wouldn't think anything of it, but because it's the Jacksons and because it's all being publicised, I think, kind of like Joe, there are lots of parents that would behave like Joe. Again, we're not saying that it's right, but because it's Michael and because of how famous they are as a family, I just think that there are a lot of things that are just amplified, and we've seen that actually throughout Michael's life. There are so many things that he did that became a massive issue, that he was criticised about, that there were headlines about, and it's like, this is really not a big deal. Like, why are you making such an issue over it? So I think, again, it's one of the downsides of unfortunately being as famous as they were.
Yeah, and it was blown out of proportion. Like he writes here, his father hit him with a switch. A switch is an ironing cord. Something stick on an iron. So that's, and if I see German translations, and this is still in the net and you can read it in German, an ironing cord gets translated into an iron cord. So if you read on the internet in Germany, he got hit with an iron cord.
Which of course is completely different. Yeah. I
mean, I imagine an iron cord. I mean,
I thought a switch, and I'm basing this on what is in the movie, An American Dream. They talk about getting a switch off the tree, like a little branch, like a little
twig.
Here in the States, that's what it is. It's a branch off a tree.
And somewhere it shows up with an ironing cord, which got turned into Germany into an iron cord.
Yeah,
translation, guys. This is the problem, isn't it? Daniela, you need to translate the book. To retranslate it now that you know.
But this is what we talked earlier when I said this German book, which I told you of. I really hope they could get a good translator for it.
I want you to talk about that at the end, because I'd be really, I think there's a lot of people that wouldn't know about that book. I didn't know about it, so it's definitely something that I'd like you to bring up a bit later. There's one thing that I wanted to, I loved this. So I asked the fans on the group to comment about Michael's relationship with his brothers, and Sherry sent something in which just absolutely cracked me up. I think she found this on Twitter. I've never seen it before. But it's a slim Tito diet, right? So Tito, was obviously somewhat on the large side at some point when they were younger. And apparently Michael dictated this diet that Tito should go on, and Jermaine wrote it down. So you probably can't see it very well, but I have the actual handwritten note. So this is like I said, dictated to by Michael. So it has Tito's weight. It's got a little picture of Tito with a speech bubble that says, "Hi, I'm the new Tito." And in the morning, he's expected to have lemon water with honey and plenty of distilled water. At noon, he's meant to have a fruit salad or a regular salad. No sugar, no soda, no ice cream, no cake, no pie. And in the late noon, he has to have steamed cabbage. And my favourite bit is at the bottom that says, "Please sign on the dotted line stating that you will obey." And there's a signature from Tito. So I love that. I just, it's so nice to get those little private insights into their, relationship. And, Michael spoke a lot about all the fun that they had and all the pranks they used to play. And, you know, again, I think this is something that we need to remember. It's very easy to focus on the negative things, which there always will be amongst siblings. But I think that they probably were very close, particularly when they were younger. And you know, they would have had a great time.
Yeah, man, there's also
can't not be close.
Between
Exactly.
Victory and Destiny tour, that it was so different because like girlfriends got involved from the brothers, and that he had really, that it took him a year to get used to this not being so close anymore. And I think that he perceived them as a kind of an enemy too, because they would get in between that closeness.
Yeah.
You see that, so
Look, their life just it wasn't a normal life, and they had a lot to deal with that most brothers and sisters, you know, wouldn't even have to consider. And it's no surprise really that some of those things came between them. What about Diana Ross? She's always fascinated me, this one. And I'm not really sure, again, what I think about her relationship. You know, we all know that she was the love of Michael's life, but they've both been very private about their relationship. So we never know for sure whether there was, you know, intimacy there, whether they were actually a couple. Some people believe that she just acted as a kind of motherly role when he was younger. Other people believe that they probably did have a bit of a clandestine relationship, and, you know, one that he wanted to continue and that she wasn't prepared to go public with. What I really was surprised at in the book is, you know, a lot of people talk about Elizabeth Taylor when they think of Michael and, you know, how close they were. But there was one paragraph in this book dedicated to Elizabeth Taylor, yet there were at least 3 whole sections. And, you know, one section might be a whole page. There were 3 whole sections about Diana Ross, and I think that's very telling. There was really interesting choice of language when he was discussing the time that he lived with her when he was, I think he was 11. You know, he does refer to her as his lover, which I found, I don't know what to make of that. What do you guys think was Michael's relationship with Diana Ross? Casey, I'll start with you.
Diana Ross is always an interesting one. Because nobody really knows for sure. I've heard different versions. Yeah, when they first started out, she was a very, very big part of that. And then as they got older, you can tell when you watch interviews or video footage, the way that they look at each other, it's very possible something did.
Yeah.
There's been, I think it was an interview with Babyface, I want to say, that supposedly Michael told him that he lost his virginity to Diana Ross. If that's true, we don't know. But Diana Ross has also always been very supportive of Michael. She's always been there, even to this day. Yeah. She's still supporting him. So I don't know which way to go on them. I would like to think that later in life they were, just from they were always together, and I mean, like I said, it's very possible.
Yeah.
But it's never been proven either.
No. I love that video. I don't know what the program was, but I just love that clip where they're both in the silver sparkly outfits, and she says something like, "Oh, you know, I never knew you were going to turn out so sexy," or something like that. Mm-hmm. And like,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh my God, he's so bashful, and you can just see that, like, how happy he is that she said that. I mean, he clearly completely.
His response was my favorite.
Yeah.
That was perfect. I'm just going, okay. If you're not seeing each other, you're putting on a show.
Yeah, for sure. Nicole, what do you think?
Yeah, the section of the book that you quoted before, but when I think he refers to her as his mother, lover, and friend combined. I kind of interpreted that as his collective description of her over a period of time. I think, yes, she was sort of that mother role when he was younger, and then they became friends, and then in my mind they became something more. But I think I think maybe Michael's feelings for her were stronger than her feelings were for him in that way. Certainly they look very comfortable with each other. I love this picture in the book.
Oh, yeah.
If that's not a picture of a couple that's intimate, I don't know what is.
I'm pretty sure he used that on one of the album booklets. Was it History? I think that picture is used on one of the album CD booklets.
They certainly look very comfortable together, and I think, I mean, Michael has said himself many times that he completely loved her. So getting hung up on whether they were intimate or not, I don't know that that's really our concern. He always wanted to keep that private. So
yeah.
And in terms of Elizabeth Taylor, I think his closeness with Elizabeth Taylor increased as time went on, so after the book he certainly became closer with Liz Taylor through the 90s, especially after the allegations in 93, and his closeness with her I think built, and if were fortunate enough to get another book, we might have seen that if he wrote a book later on.
Yeah, Elizabeth Taylor was definitely one of his best friends in the 90s. She was always there for him, which was amazing.
She was so supportive.
One of my favorite scenes with them was when she got him an elephant. I don't know if you guys ever saw that clip, but it was
kind of makes us look, bad friends, right?
Right?
Imagine somebody would come to your yard and give you a present, an elephant. No, you don't want that.
I think the only animal someone's ever given me as a present besides a fish was a cat. So, tell them they're slacking.
Daniela, what do you think?
Yeah, I also think, from all the pictures you see and the films, they were so comfortable with each other, and or you can also tell like how Michael touched other persons, but that was different. So I think it's most likely also that this relationship went on another level.
Yeah, but Nicole, I think you make a great point, which is as fans, it's natural that we want to know every possible aspect of his life. We want to know the nitty gritty, but you're right. I think as fans we have to respect his privacy at times, which is something that I want to come on to in the next section. But he was a very private person, and I suppose that we should also really respect her, because she's, even if it did happen, she's never come out and betrayed him by telling the world that, although I'm sure he would probably be happy. That would be the one thing he'd be happy that was told to the public, but she's always respected him enough to not do that. And I think that shows a great deal about their relationship, that they had that mutual respect, and that whatever did happen stayed private. And I think that's great. We're about halfway through, so I'm just conscious that us, as much as people watching, might want to sort of grab a drink or have a little toilet break. So if it's okay, I'm going to have a 5-minute break, and then we'll resume in 5 minutes, where we'll be talking a little bit more about Michael's desire for privacy. So are we okay to have a 5-minute quick break?
5 minutes.
Perfect. See you in 5.
Oh, fine.
Okay, just while we wait for Nicole to return, I'm just going to remind everybody or let everybody know what's coming up in the second half. So we've got 4 more discussion points to talk about. We're going to talk about Michael's desire for privacy and whether that backfired on him, particularly later in life. We're going to talk about his references to his physical appearance in the book. We're going to talk about what made Michael a musical genius, which, you know, I don't think you can have a discussion about Michael without talking about that. And the last thing that we're going to talk about is Michael's views on children and why children were so important to Michael. After that, we're going to each share 1 or 2 of our favourite quotes or paragraphs from the book. We're then going to discuss our overall opinion of the book. You know, what did we particularly like? Was there anything that we didn't like or that maybe we felt could have been done or written better? We're going to have a little share of some of our favourite pictures from the book, and lots of you have written in to give your overall opinion of the book. So I look forward to sharing those views. Then I'll give the answers for the quiz. I'll reveal the book for next month's meet. And then I've just got an end quote to read from the book to close. So I hope you're enjoying. I think that we certainly are. Any opportunity to speak about Michael with other fans is amazing. Daniela, we had a little bit of a pre-run yesterday, just where we were going to, you know, where we discussed what we were going to talk about this evening. And we did start to talk about Michael's privacy. I mean, he references that a couple of times in his book. On page 271, he actually uses the term obsession. I have an obsession with privacy. On page 121, he says that he doesn't like doing TV, overexposing himself because it affects his sales. I've heard him say in countless interviews about his desire to remain mysterious. You know, the more mysterious that you are, the more interested people are in you. And I think that he, you know, really carried that throughout his life. He was a very private person. He rarely did interviews. And that's why when he did do interviews with the likes of Oprah Winfrey, Martin Bashir, you know, it was a massive deal because he just wasn't really in the public eye. If it wasn't for promotions, music sales, concerts, you know, he just, apart from those things, he just didn't really do TV. So when he was on TV doing an interview, it was a massive deal. And you spoke quite at length about the fact that you felt that because he was so private and because he didn't always explain himself, you felt that that actually created quite a lot of problems for him.
Yeah, because I can remember I came to the United States in 1987, and that was like one time when this really peak frenzy started. Yeah, this super stardom. Yeah, and there was well, a really high demand for, like, people wanted to know about him, and nothing came. Yeah, so and I can remember what came was like I think now I understand this is like this prankster thing he had going on, like sending out messages, ridiculous, but like the media having this high demand on information about Michael Jackson, and there was nothing. Yeah, so they would start to make something up. Yeah, you could, like, I can relate that very well to these European royalty houses. Yeah, they were also like the Windsors or wherever. They were always very private, and with the Diana, so things would get made up, and now they do it really better. And I think this is something like celebrities do today, like give controlled information. Yeah, you are the one controlling what is going out, but you have to send something out, you know, to meet this demand. Yeah, and all the celebrities, they use the media when they when they need it, when it's good for them, yeah. But also they're still there when maybe you want to stay private. So you have to get a certain kind of control mechanism. You know, you cannot say, okay, now I don't need you. I am very private, yeah. And also we talked about yesterday. Yeah, today would be, I guess, different with the vitiligo and everything. No celebrity would have a problem to go out and say, listen, I have breast cancer or whatever. And this is just normal today, but it was not in Michael Jackson's days, not at all. So, and that mounted up to this, you know, this, what we get by these changes we went through. It was just like we would not know what to make of it. So people start to speculate. So, it's my strong belief if he were given some more of himself, controlled, yeah? You are in control of what's going out, that would not have gotten to the point where it went.
Casey, I think it would be really interesting to have Michael around in the times of social media that we have, and I've always wondered how much he would use that, you know, because he is so private, and would he have only used it for promotions, or would he actually have encouraged him to be a bit more open? Because when I read this book, you know, I love it because it's Michael in his own words, but I still found it very guarded. I don't think he truly, I think there's lots of things that he doesn't really truly open up about, you know. And Michael, like I said, Michael remained very private throughout his whole life. And I just wonder, like Daniela said, whether that was a sign of the times, or whether that was something that was just part of him, and even if he was alive today, he would still be that private. What do you think?
I think he would still be private, but he might open up a little bit more, even if it's just to engage with his fans. Because, you know, now when you have Facebook, and you could do Instagram Live, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and all of these things where your fans can get on there and talk to you and ask questions and, you know, things like that. He might have done that a little bit in that aspect, but I don't know that he would have ever gotten all that personal, because that's definitely something he never wanted, which is why there's a lot of speculation about parts of his life that nobody knows, because it's not, I mean, one, is nobody's business. And there are just certain aspects that he always kept private.
Yeah, but then I'm really surprised, Casey, because he opened very willingly his doors to Neverland to whoever wanted to come, you know? So this is somewhere contradictory. And I still, I do have this memory of it's again circulating. A piece of paper, he drew up something, what made Thriller great. You know, his thoughts why Thriller was great, you know, probably to keep this as remembrance. And on the bottom there is, you know what paper I'm speaking from? There is He an Enigma, Stay an Enigma.
Yeah, I mean, I think he definitely would have a little bit, only because it would engage him with his fans. It would engage him with people. Yeah. I just don't, you know, when it comes to certain personal things, I don't know that he would have really been super open about it.
No. But this is why I say controlled information. Exactly. Yeah, to not open the door to speculation. If the media, if the masses have something to feed on, okay, then it's enough, no? Yeah.
Absolutely, because the media are going to look for anything that they can to twist.
Yeah.
And they've done that even with very little information. Yeah. They'll take one snippet and they will twist that around to benefit them.
Because there was no other. And I mean, I remember what kind of mega superstar Michael Jackson was, and that was the first time you experienced something like this. And you're here with nothing, no? Yeah.
Yeah. How we were just talking about Michael's insistence on privacy, and in the book he actually uses the word obsession. I have an obsession for privacy. And you know, Daniela was suggesting that, you know, some of Michael's problems and the way that the media treated him and the way that the public viewed him in a negative light was almost in part created because he was so private, and certain things that he did or certain ways that he behaved or some of his views, he could have perhaps explained them rather than just being so defensive and, you know, I hate the media and, you know, you've got no right to know this stuff about me. If he'd have just opened up a little bit more, then perhaps people would have understood him a bit better. Oh, sorry, Nicole, I think
your microphone is closed.
I'm back, sorry. Yeah, I completely understand that viewpoint, and I think you might be right to a certain extent. At the same time, you might all remember that there's a handwritten note that I don't know if you've mentioned this, sorry, I might have missed it, a handwritten note that he apparently wrote in 1979 along the lines of, I will no longer be Michael Jackson. I want to be known as just MJ. I will do no interviews. I will be a complete mystery, you know, and sort of his intention for his public image moving forward. And I agree that reclusiveness gave opportunity for the media to twist any little bits of information that they had. But then you have to look at the other side of it. Like, would he have become what he became without that, you know, that mystery and that not having the interviews that made the fans crave more? And maybe he wouldn't have been the success he was without that.
I think he would. Talent, yeah. Yeah, I mean, no. Yeah. I think, I really believe it would have made life easier for him, to give a little bit more.
But Nicole, what I did start off by saying when I introduced this was, you know, Michael spoke on various interviews about this importance of creating this mystery around him, and the kind of shock factor and surprising people, and you know, he really believed that was what was going to keep people's attention on him. So it was I mean, whether it hindered him or helped him, that was definitely his agenda.
Yeah, it was, and it was an agenda. It was not like, it was an agenda. Yeah, he one time took the decision it's going to be like this. Yeah,
he does state specifically in the book, and I think maybe one of the reasons he wanted to write the book was to clear up some of the misconceptions, and he does say that towards the end, that he hoped the book does clear up some of those misconceptions. But then not everybody reads a book, so
and it spawned a lot more of misconception. It did, because you tell something, but you keep it on the very surface, you know, the very surface.
But that's something I was going to say before too. If tiny little bits of information were always twisted, if he gave the media and the public more, maybe they would have twisted even more. You don't, I mean, hindsight, is a wonderful thing, but at the same time, you can't predict what would have happened.
No, you cannot, yeah. But it went wrong the one way, so maybe there would have been a chance. The other way was okay, or better.
Okay, so Steph, we had quite an interesting conversation about, it was actually about the book in general, but the comment that she made, or the kind of root of what she was trying to say, is that she felt that Michael was very conscious about his image. And here she wasn't really talking about his physical appearance per se, but his image and how he was portrayed to other people. She felt that Michael was very conscious about his image, and that it kind of dictated the way that he wrote the book. It was almost like he was striving to create this perfect image of himself. And I just wondered how much we agree or disagree with that statement. I mean, we can certainly talk about his image and his physical appearance, but really from the point of the book and how it was written and how he portrayed himself, or maybe how other people would have perceived him just through reading that book. Do you agree with Steph's view, or do you think that's not the case. Casey, what do you think?
I would definitely have to agree. It gives you some information, but not necessarily a lot of information. He doesn't delve too far into anything. He gives you enough to kind of give you a little bit of an insight, but it also seems like it's just the point that he wants you to see. So I can kind of see that, but at the same time, when you're writing a book, especially about your own life, that's kind of the point. Do you want people, whatever you're feeling, how you want people to perceive you or to see you is the way that you write it.
Yeah.
And for that, he did a great job. So yeah, I would definitely have to agree with her.
Nicole, how do you feel that Michael would have been perceived through, you know, for people, you know, imagine that nobody knew who Michael Jackson was. No one saw any interviews. No one saw his performances. No one heard his music. No one had ever heard him speak, and they just read his book. How do you feel that people would have perceived Michael from the way that he wrote his book, the way that he spoke about himself?
Well, certainly the hardworking and that hardworking side and perfectionist side of his musicianship shines through a fair bit in the book. I think that strong family connection is there as well. It's hard to kind of separate the two, though, isn't it? Like, it's hard. I mean, I did read the book when I was younger, as fairly early on in my interest in him, but you still already know who he is. I mean, there's already that sense of understanding of who he was, and that's a difficult question to answer because it's very hard to separate it. And again, we all read with different lenses on and different filters, and everybody might interpret things slightly differently. So yeah, it's difficult to I do think he was certainly trying to portray, I think he was always conscious of his image as a physical appearance and image in general. And you could see in the way, for example, and he says it in the book, that he was worried he had sort of I can't remember the words he used, but kind of like a goody-goody image.
And
I
remember that bit.
Certainly when you look at what he did with the Bad album and Through the Bad Era, it was almost trying to go against that side. I think everything that he did was very much always conscious of image. So certainly he had to have, I agree that he definitely would have written the book with image in mind.
Yeah. And a big proof for this, like being very concerned about his image. You remember a video clip when he had the accident in the Pepsi commercial shoot? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they transport him out, and what does he do? He asks for his glove.
Yeah.
And waves with it. I mean, he must have been in pain like hell or whatever. And the thought Michael has is, wow, I need my glove. I need to show this glove. You know. It speaks more than the whole book, doesn't it?
Yeah. Daniela, did you feel in the book, I think that particularly for people who are not fans, I think that fans always view anything or read anything to do with Michael with kind of, you know, as Nicole said, you know, particular lenses on, and we're very reluctant to criticize him. A lot of fans, I mean, literally will not hear a bad word said against him. But I did think if someone else read this book, you know, if my husband is not a major Michael Jackson fan, if he read that book, I think that Michael could have potentially come across as being quite self-centered. You know, it was very much like, I did this and I'm the best at this, and and that was I was quite surprised at that, because I never really had Michael down as being that way. You know, he's always appeared to be quite modest, quite humble, and I feel like if there were people that didn't really know him in the way that we did, read that book, I think that it would be quite easy to have that negative view of him, actually.
Yeah, okay, you have to know the history of this book. Yeah, that was not just like ask how old was Michael Jackson when he wrote this book. first two mistakes. It was written about a period of time. It took like 4 or whatever years to this book to finish. And then it was not written by him. It was not. That was ghostwriting. You know? The first ghostwriter to sit on this book, the publishing company said, no, we are not going to accept this book. That's like, it was not like juicy enough. That's, you find this in this afterword. This afterword is worth buying this book. Again, it's not juicy enough, yeah. And then a second ghostwriter would sit on this book. I mean, ghostwriting for somebody, for an enigma like Michael Jackson, you don't know anything, and he probably didn't say a lot also, you know? So that second ghostwriting must have been so bad that Michael said, no, I'm not accepting this. And then this editing woman came in, and she was doing this with Michael. She flew half around the globe, and they would sit in the evenings together sometimes. And it was not even enough interest on Michael's side on this book to read it themselves, to read the script itself. She had to read it to him, yeah. And he would just listen or not, or say no, or the little thing and little itsy bitsy. So this is a book about Michael, but it is not a book written by Michael. You have to really stress that point. And this is why the book is like this. I told you before that I bought this book, and I really, really remember we all looked at each other because, yes, you read this book, but you don't know anything.
Yeah.
You know, it was so strongly anticipated. And then you read this and you say, what's to gain of that now? Yeah. And this is also for fans when they say, well, this is the Bible and whatever. No, it's not. It's not written for Michael. He had actually, and she states that very well in there, he had no interest in writing that book. And I can read it to you. I marked it down. So, well, she writes here about how much attention and how much thorough Michael puts into his music, being a perfectionist in his music. Look again at the music videos, really look at every detail, note the care taken with every shot, every outfit, every lighting. His hand was in everything. His unerring eye was always the final arbiter? How you say that? Arbiter? Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I could say he gave the same attention to this book. While he loved books and carried them with him wherever he went, creating one was just not exciting for him as finding the right note or step or guitarist. So the writing of this book took a long time.
Interesting.
And when this book was finished, yeah, Michael got really like not the second, the third, the fourth thought and wanted to withdraw this book again because he was not happy with what this was. But the process was already so far, yeah.
Yeah.
That, well, they had hustle and blah blah blah, like always, and then it got published. But actually, Michael did not want this book being published.
Casey, how did you perceive his portrayal of himself? I mean, did you feel like when you're writing it, can you hear Michael when you're reading it? Do you feel like it's in his own words?
In some areas, there are like some parts you can kind of tell they use some of his words.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can tell that somebody was also in there and kind of reworking it.
Yeah.
Which I understand.
Kind of the last pages, you can really hear Michael. Yeah.
Yeah. The last page, that's Michael.
The last 20 pages, this is how he would have phrased it, and you can hear him. Yeah. But in almost, but the rest of the book, little pages, little paragraphs. I agree. But it's exactly what Emma says. he would not have said that like this. Yeah,
No.
I did that and I did that and I rehearsed my brothers and I decided this on the show and I would, especially the part of the Destiny show got really like, no, a victory show. Yeah, it's not Michael talking. It's not Michael talking.
No, I
Nicole,
definitely.
sorry, Casey. You
No, you're
agree?
good. I agree. I definitely agree with her. You can. There's just some parts you can just tell, not how he talks. They're not things that he would say.
Nicole, what do you think? How did you read it?
Yeah, I was just, when Casey and Danielle were saying that, I was thinking about the Motown 25 section where he was, I think it's worded like, the I did this and I worked them really hard. Yeah, that certainly doesn't sound like him. He would.
No,
he was always much more humble than that.
What we know is he would put somebody else in front to happen. This is your moment to shine. Yeah.
What was really interesting that came out of this conversation about, I didn't know about the ghostwriter until a couple of days ago, and Steph messaged me and said, I think she'd had a conversation with Rebecca Harris, who apparently discovered, and this just blew my mind, that apparently, you know, me and Steph were saying how great it would be if there was like an audio book version, like imagine if Michael was reading this, you know, that would just be amazing. And apparently there is about 20 hours. So Michael, I don't know if he was interviewed or whether he just kind of dictated 20 hours of his life story that was used for the book. And when I found that out and I reflected on how it was written again, what I feel happened is that, I mean, this took me, obviously I had to stop and put notes, but if I wasn't doing that, I think this takes about 6 to 8 hours to read. Okay, so there's 6 to 8 hours of the finished product, but there's 20 hours of speech that Michael provided about his life for the book. So that means there's 12 to 14 hours of his life story that's not in this book. And I mean, of course, you know, you can't include everything, but when I reflected on how this was written, there's definitely points where I can hear Michael. It's the sort of language that he would use. But I found it a very disjointed book. It's kind of like it would be talking about one thing, and then it wouldn't even be a new paragraph and it would go on to something else. And when I found out about those 20 hours of audio, what I feel happened is that the person who was listening to this 20 hours literally just took chunks of what he said and just put it together.
Yeah, and you have to.
That's how I read it.
Before this was finished, 3 persons would work on this, you know, and just put there, put there, get it over with. It's already 4 years. We have pressure. We have to finish. You know? Yeah. So, and I'm so surprised. I mean, right at the beginning, it states the art of storytelling and everything. You know how important this is to him. You find nothing here. I mean, there is no art of storytelling.
No, there's not.
It's not even a good writing.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember times in 1988 we were really like, yeah, sales went up, whoosh, sure, like high demand on information for Michael Jackson, and then you would read the book and you would say, and so what? Nice pictures. Didn't see them yet.
Yeah. But, you know, Daniel, it goes back to what you said. You know, Michael didn't want to put this book out because everything that he did, he was a perfectionist, and he knew that this book was not perfect. This would never be, whether he wrote it or not, this would never be something that he would be happy to put out. There's so much wrong with it in terms, I mean, I love it because it's about Michael, and I would love any book that's, you know, writing positively about him, but there's so much wrong with it in terms of, you know, like you say, the lack of skill in the way that it's written. It's not artistic, it's not fluid, it's very disjointed. The fact that there's clearly big chunks of information that's missing, and you know, maybe that was a conscious decision on his part, maybe he wanted to keep things private, I'm not sure. But you know, the perfectionist that Michael was, well, you've said he was not happy for that to be put out there. And I think it's a real shame, like Nicole said earlier, I think it's a real shame that he didn't get the opportunity later on in life to release another autobiography, because I think it would have been completely different. So
yeah, also, I mean, to release an autobiography with 26, I mean,
yeah,
I guess, I mean, in later years you sum up and you see things different, yeah, about what happened in your life. Yeah, that would have been a lot more interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe a bit more honest as well, I don't know. So we're talking about his perfectionist attitude. So you know, we can't talk about Michael without talking about his genius, and he does talk quite a lot in the book about how his records were made, how he choreographed you know, the famous, for example, Billie Jean performance from Motown 25. He talks a lot about his genius in a, you know, quite a modest way, but what made Michael a musical genius? What, you know, it's something that I've always wondered. Like I said, when I've been to his concerts and I see the way that the fans are reacting, and in no other concert have I ever experienced that level of almost worship towards him. You know, people really saw him, you know, as a kind of godlike figure. And of course that will be due to everything that Michael stood for. It will be, you know, his looks, it will be his character, his humanitarian side, his ability to perform, the fact that he put everything into every performance, every song. But particularly in terms of his musical creations and his mindset, what made him such a musical genius? Why do you think he was able to be such a success in his career? Casey, what do you think?
For him, it's everything. All of his songs had meaning. There was a purpose behind them.
Yeah.
You could hear his heart in it. You could literally feel everything about him and everything that he did, because he did put his all in everything. Whether, you know, every song that he made was definitely him. It was authentic, and that's rare, especially today. That is very, very rare. It's one of the biggest reasons I've always been one of his biggest fans. His music says something. It has meaning behind it. It has purpose, and it is authentic.
I remember it was either a producer or a songwriter once said that absolutely nothing went into a song. No instrument, no vocal, nothing went into a song that wasn't supposed to be there or that didn't have a purpose. And he was that, you know, specific and that much of a perfectionist that, you know, every single instrument had a meaning, and every single lyric had a meaning, and every single little kind of skit that he did at the end, everything. Nicole, why do you know, love him so much? What do you think made him such a genius that maybe to this date no one has been able to replicate?
Do you mean how he was the way he was? Is that what you're asking? Or what are the things about him that I like? Both. I think it comes back to the scientific debate, nature versus nurture, doesn't it? I mean, a lot of people talk about him being born born performer, born to sing, and certainly you can't deny that there must have been natural talent there, but I always think sometimes that dismisses the hard work that went in and the environment that he grew up in, to be constantly surrounded by music, to have his father and his uncle practicing and rehearsing, and Michael being that curious little boy who always wanted to learn. He was always, wherever he was, whether it was on a film set or in a studio, he was always trying to learn. So I think that natural inclination to learn and be curious taught him so much in all those, and being in the environments that he was growing up, he would have absorbed so much and learnt so much. And he obviously had, he speaks in, there's a, on page 98, he talks about his instincts, and it's where he was talking about wanting to wear the Got to Be There hat when he sang it during one of their tours. And he was told no, and it comes back to that control. They had control over him at that point, but I think he was only 13 at that time when he wanted to do that. But that natural instinct to put a certain outfit with a certain song. And he talked about Dancing Machine and wanting to create a particular dance for that song. And I think that that's one of the things that made him so great, was that, you know, if I say a name of a song, you immediately get an image in your mind, and vice versa. If I showed you a striped suit, you would automatically think of a certain song. And I think that ability to pair things together and to have, you know, that ability to naturally kind of create such a persona out of his music, that's one of the things that made him so great.
Yeah, I agree. Daniela, what do you think?
Yeah, I very much agree with Nicole. And I also marked in the book this part with the hat, you know, and the hat showed up in Billie Jean years apart, yeah. So, and that also sounds like how determined he was, as I said, like strong-willed, yeah. This is what I want to do. This is what I see. I think we got that from Joe, definitely, you know. Yeah, and well, I just had, he had a way of reaching people. He had some kind of inner light, you know. I see him standing on this stage and this sea of people, and he wouldn't even have to move, you know. Well, and he certainly reached me in a very young age already. I mean, just came. Sometimes I would like to say he was from heaven sent, and he was. He had a mission here on earth. He did.
Yeah, I think so.
And I'm very sure if he would not have been born in this musical family, like he was so gifted with art, yeah. If he would have wrote poems, or if he would have painted or whatever, he would have found a way to follow his mission. But it was music because he was in this family.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I really love.
If I see Michael Jackson, I see light. I see light. Yeah.
I love that. I really loved the bit in the book on page 261 where he talks about the ability to move people with just sound. And I think he tells the story of he used to kind of sing melodies to Janet. And he used to say, well, what are you thinking about when I sing this? Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think he was, at the time, he was trying to write We Are the World. And he sung her this kind of melody or this tune. And he said, what does this make you think about? And she said, people dying in Africa. And he said, that's what I want. And I think, you know, he's not someone that kind of just learnt the trade as a kid and then became really complacent. You know, the amount of success that he had, it would have been so easy to think, you know what, I've made it, I know it all, I'm the best in the world. Like, he never stopped learning, never. He always studied, whether it was art, performers, singers, musicians, the technicians in the studio. He never ever stopped asking questions. He never ever stopped learning. And you know, Jackie wrote in to say that the reason that he was such a genius is because he studied the greats and picked the best aspects from each and morphed them into one. And I don't think he ever stopped doing that. The dancers, you know, it doesn't matter if people weren't involved in the music industry. He looked at what they did. Why are they the best? You know, P.T. Barnum is a really good example. He was really obsessed with him, and you know, I mean, he's got nothing to do with music, but he loved his story, he loved his success, and he wanted to emulate that. So he looked at what he did to create that success, and he carried things, you know, from him throughout his whole career. So yeah, one.
I think that a lot of his success, you have to give Joe a bit of credit there as well. So much of Joe became, like, for example, Joe was enormously ambitious. He taught the kids to reach for the stars and to set these big goals and to have big dreams. That obviously rubbed off on Michael, and he was as ambitious as he was. I mean, he was laughed at during Thriller because he wanted it to be the biggest selling album of all time, and Quincy Jones and some of the other producers or engineers, thought that was laughable. But if you don't have those big goals, will you ever get to the extremes that he got to? And then, I mean, you have to his perfectionism to, as you were saying before, about being so obsessed with just the tiny, each individual instrument and giving thought to absolutely every part of it. That perfectionism, I think, in part came from Joe as well, from way back when they were kids and they had to rehearse over and over and get it perfect. So much of who he became did come from Joe: the ambition, the perfectionism, the hard work. And obviously the support of his mother helped him get there as well. But I think certainly that parental influence is pretty strong.
Yeah, I agree. The last discussion point that I wanted to raise, which is obviously, you know, again, you can't really talk about Michael without talking about the influence of children on his life and his music. And I wanted to actually read a direct quote from the book, which is on page 272. And I thought this just, you know, if anybody ever questioned Michael and his agenda with children or his reasons for loving children the way that he did, I think that this kind of answers their questions. There are so many things all around us to be thankful for. Wasn't it Robert Frost who wrote about a world a person can see in a leaf? I think that's true. That's what I love about being with kids. They notice everything. They aren't jaded. They get excited by things we've forgotten to get excited about anymore. They are so natural too, so unself-conscious. I love being around them. There always seems to be a bunch of kids over at the house and they're always welcome. They energize me just being around them. They look at everything with such fresh eyes, such open minds. That's part of what makes kids so creative. They don't worry about the rules. The picture doesn't have to be in the center of the piece of paper. The sky doesn't have to be blue. They are accepting of people too. The only demands they make is to be treated fairly and to be loved. I think that's what we all want. And he goes on for another 2 pages, you know, talking about the fact that children always are honest with him. They don't want anything from him. You know, he talks about going to visit sick children in hospitals and just being able to see the joy on their faces just by him being there. And I really feel that children gave him something that adults just couldn't. And even, you know, even to an extent, his fans, you know, we only ever want good things for Michael, but, you know, we can be very demanding of him. And as much as we hate the media, it was the media that provided us with the news, the information, the pictures. And I think children were genuinely the only people in the world who didn't really ask anything of him. Just his presence was enough for them. And, you know, to me, when people talk about Michael with children and they try and make it a negative thing, I I just don't know how people can do that. If they knew Michael at all, and if they, for example, read that paragraph in his book, to me it's so clear why children were so important to him. Have any of you guys got any thoughts or additional comments to make?
Having read the book pre-1993, I think I think I'd read it a couple of times pre-1993, and I was born in 1980, so I was 13 in 1993, so pretty young to be, you know, reading all about that stuff. But I remember when the allegations first broke, my immediate thought was that doesn't make sense, because I think of what I'd read in the book about how, you know, his relationship with children and why he liked being around them, and it just immediately didn't make sense to me because of what I had, that passage that you just read and all of the other sections that follow that, I suppose. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah.
But this is also a section which I say I can hear him speak here. This is something he definitely wrote.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Can you have it in your ear? Yeah.
Casey, did you have anything to add about, you know, I mean, Angie Huff wrote in to say she felt that children were particularly important to Michael because he wanted to protect them from hurting the way that he hurt as a child. And she also made another really poignant point, which I think a lot of us can relate to, which is that Michael helped child and adolescent fans who were going through a tough time, and he gave them light and hope. And I think that's true. I think a lot of us discovered Michael in our childhood, and you know, as we know, he gives a lot of us a purpose. You know, I don't think any of our lives would be the same if he wasn't in it. And I think, like I said, for a lot of us, that started, I know for me personally, I became a fan when I was 6 or 7 years old. And I definitely think that whether it was as a child or whether it's now as an adult, when I'm going through a tough time, I mean, he's the first person that I turn to. And I think that that is true for many, many people all over the world.
It is. I mean, he has, you know, so many songs that can honestly make you feel better.
Yeah.
When it comes to what?
It's the same here. I mean, Michael was always there.
Always.
Always.
I mean, today, if I'm feeling upset,
toughest patches.
turn him on and it's an instant smile. Yeah. Or my other personal favorite, if you go onto YouTube, you can watch videos of like him laughing and smiling, and it just completely changes your mood.
Yeah.
It's the effect that he has on people. And like with kids, you know, and I've gotten people who have said comments to me too about everything. I said, you don't get it. Kids are so pure. They're so honest.
Yeah.
And they are naturally loving.
Yeah.
They don't see him as Michael Jackson, the superstar. They saw him as him. And, you know, when everybody else around you only sees you as somebody super famous, it's refreshing. And he would always do anything he could to protect a child. I mean, he saved countless lives.
Yeah.
Paid for surgeries. Nobody can beat that. That was purely amazing. And I love reading all the stories about those too.
Yeah, I can't wait actually to catch up on, you know, the girl's interview about his humanitarian side, because, you know, it's something that's not spoken enough about, particularly in the public. It's not spoken about at all. I think to this day he's still, I might be wrong on this, but I think to this day he's still the celebrity who's donated the most amount of money. You know, and like, how is this not spoken about?
Because this is one of the things he really wanted to keep private. You know, he did not want to brag about it. Yeah.
He didn't do it for publicity or anything. He did it because that's just who he was. Yeah. He really didn't care if he got noticed for it or not. Yeah. Which was purely amazing also. Yeah. The media wasn't interested in that anyway.
No, they've always had their own agenda. We know that.
Yeah, unfortunately, your agenda usually isn't good.
No. Listen, him going to, you know, hospitals to visit sick children, that's not going to make the front pages. And it's as simple as that. You know, selling a story about him, you know, molesting kids, that's going to sell papers, and that's what it's about. So,
Definitely.
okay, so the next section is I wanted us to share one or two of our favourite quotes or paragraphs from the book. I mean, there were so many to choose from, and I've tried to include some of them in the discussion so far. But I mean, I'll start by saying I think we all loved, you know, the 3 words, "I love women." Love that bit. And I think, you know, we know that that's true. We know.
Yeah.
I really loved
I'm sure I love them, but just not in the way somebody would think.
Well, yeah. We know the truth.
That one of my
We know the truth, yeah.
all-time favorite scenes. It was at an award show. And I think it was the same one where Katharine Hepburn told him to take his glasses off.
Yes.
And he said, "This is for Katharine Hepburn and the girls in the balcony."
Yeah, that's great.
God,
Yeah.
I was rolling. I was like, all right, that was good.
Oh, he was a smoothie for sure.
Yes, he was.
But funny enough, it's funny that you should mention that anecdote about Katharine Hepburn, because that was one of the ones that I picked out. I loved that story. And, you know, when I've been to Michael Jackson events, I went to Kingvention last year. I've been to Brad Sundberg's seminar. And, you know, that they're the kind of stories that fans want to hear. They want to hear those, you know, one-to-one stories that it just kind of gives you that little glimpse into his life. And I never knew that story. Obviously, I've seen those the Grammy Awards, and I've seen where he takes his glasses off or he goes up without his glasses. But I never knew the backstory. And you know, you kind of feel like you're getting a bit of a secret backstory, you know. So I really love hearing those. My personal absolute favorite, and I was going to read the full quote, but I won't, just because it's about 4 pages long. But you guys can read it for yourself. The whole story about Motown 25. I mean, I just love that performance anyway, that I could watch that over and over and over again, and I never get bored. But hearing the full story behind that, and the fact that he rehearsed so much with his brothers for the, you know, the family reunion performance. He worked so hard on that, that, you know, Billie Jean was very much an afterthought, and he didn't really have a lot of time to rehearse for that. And it was pretty much like the night before, he just came up, or maybe even partly on the day, he just came up with this choreography. And that just blows my mind, because it was just such an unbelievable performance. And it was definitely a performance that, you know, just made him shoot to absolute stardom. And the fact that he's been able to do that with hardly any rehearsal, any practice, I mean, to me, it just really shows his genius again. If you want to read that, for anyone who's watching, it starts on page 207 and goes along until page 213. So if you haven't read that, or if you want to read over it to see what I'm talking about, then please read that, because I just love that whole story. And the fact that he told someone to pass him the hat, sort of very discreetly, you know, when the kind of spotlight was on him and he was in the dark. And it was all just, there's so many things that I didn't know about that performance, which, you know, I really loved to read about that. Nicole, what was your favourite from the book?
I wrote down 3 favourites because I couldn't choose. The first one's on page 115, and it's in the context of having to leave Motown, and he's talking about what was having to speak up for what was happening, that they weren't happy and things like that. And he says, "I know most people don't think of me as tough or strong-willed, but that's just because they don't know me." I just quite like that quote, especially given what he went through after this book was written. We certainly come to know of him as very tough and strong-willed, and still there's probably still some people that don't necessarily realize how tough, mentally strong he had to be to endure what he endured. My second one's kind of a funny one. I find it funny. I quite like Elvis. I consider myself an Elvis fan, but obviously not as much as I am a Michael Jackson fan. And I find it quite funny when he says, he's talking about Elvis, and he says, as important as he was to music, black as well as white, he just wasn't an influence on me. I mean, it's, you know, most
especially
people might
when
find
he
that
went to marry his daughter, right?
People probably were like, oh, a bit of a burn there, but at the same time, it makes, you know, he often was taken with children and people who didn't kind of get all hung up on who he was. And I wonder if it was the same with Lisa Marie, the fact that Elvis wasn't a big deal to Michael, whether that, you know, influenced their relationship because he didn't hold Elvis in such a higher regard as other people. Maybe that there was a connection there between the two of them because of that. And my third one is talking about the media, and he says, you know, the media is in the context of talking about the media as a business, and he says press is in the business of making money, sometimes at the expense of accuracy, fairness, and even the truth. That is very fitting given what happened last year, and obviously those thoughts then developed into the songs later in the 90s, Money, Tabloid Junkie, things like that. So I quite like that quote as well. It's one of my favorites from the book.
Great choices. Casey, what did you select?
My favorite quote was, it's on page 72. It said, a picture or painting can reveal a universe. In the same vein, an actor's performance or a collective performance can transform me. I just felt like that said so much about him as well, because that is him.
Yeah.
I don't know, that quote just stuck with me the whole time. I just kept coming back to it.
Yeah. And Daniela, what did you choose?
Well, I said it already. I do like all the pages, like, because I can really hear him from page
Daniela, just read us the whole book. It's fine.
No, I'm not. Read it yourself, but that's him, yeah, for him. And then I marked something because I found it so hilarious. And when I read that, I had automatically in my head, I love to tour. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The homemade use, and he said, no, I don't love, and give all these explanations. And then you gave in and said, okay, I love to do. I had him in my ear, and I read that. It goes on about like Diana, the whole thing, and then he tells that when he got married, he had to walk around pretending to be overwhelmed that Diana was getting married to this man I never met. I wanted her to be happy, blah, blah, blah. And he goes on that he was a bit hurt and jealous because he always loved her. And then the next thing comes, another love was Brooke Shields, and that's it. Yeah. We were romantically serious for a while. And then there have been a lot of wonderful women in my life whose names I do not want to mention to the reader of this book because it would be unfair. They are not celebrities and they are unaccustomed to having their names in the print. Yeah. So who was that? A lot of women, a lot of interesting women. A lot.
Goes back to Michael being a womanizer,
not being celebrities. But Michael, how many people did you know not being celebrity? Yeah, and then the same paragraph, it doesn't even stop, it goes on. Liza Minnelli is a person whose friendship I always cherish. So, and this is also a perfect example. He would never have that.
No.
So, and I had this in my ear, like, I love to tour. This is exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to write something about women, so write something, no? So.
I'm going to say that.
There have been a lot of wonderful women in my life. Bragging on about Diana, whooshing through Brooke Shields, and then going straight to Liza Minnelli.
We love him. Sherry wrote in to say that one of her favourites was on page 49. The greatest education is watching the masters at work, which is, you know, very apt for him. And also on page 70, a great showman touches everybody. And he, I think, again, that's Michael, isn't it? You know, he did touch everybody, whether they were 95, male, female, black, white, you know, in poverty or, you know, he just did touch everybody. And
yeah,
you know,
and this is also one of the great things of him. Yeah, there were no boundaries.
There's not anywhere in this world that you could go that they don't know who Michael Jackson is.
Nowhere. No. Yeah.
There is no age barrier. There is no race barrier. There is no like I like this style of music barrier. It's just so universal.
Well, there was a video. It wasn't too long. I wanted, maybe it was on No, it was on Facebook. The little boy was like 2 or 3, maybe, dancing to Thriller.
Oh, on the bed.
Yes, I was like, okay, that's adorable.
Yeah.
It just shows you they start that young.
Yeah. We need to get the, you know, those generations. We need to instill it in them, you know.
Yeah, this is also nice because we are taping this now. This will stay, you know. Maybe I was thinking this tonight in my bed after we talked yesterday. Maybe in 20, 30 years, some young kid will pick this up and get an interest in Michael Jackson.
I hope so.
And carry on. Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to do a quick little vote before we just give our final summary of the book, and then I'll just be doing the quiz answers and closing off. So in the book, Michael claimed his top 3 Jackson 5 hits were ABC, I'll Be There, and Never Can Say Goodbye. Those were his 3 favourites. I did do a poll on the group, and in 3rd place was Blame It on the Boogie. In 2nd place was Can You Feel It? And in 1st place was I'll Be There. So that's what the fans voted for. That was their favourite. What are your favourite 3 hits from either the Jackson 5 or the Jacksons era? Nicole, what's your top 3? As hard as it is to choose.
My favourite's Dancing Machine. I know he talks about in the book that he loves Dancing Machine too, I remember. And he remember being happy that one of my favourites was something that he loved as well. And I got a bit of a kick out of in the 30th anniversary concert when he says, at the start of Dancing Machine, he says, now one of my favourites, and sings that. And I Want You Back and Can You Feel It? I'm probably my other 2 favourites if I had to pick 3.
Casey, what about you?
Who's Loving You? I Want You Back. Music and Me.
Yeah. That's not a common choice, but that is a beautiful song.
Love that song.
Yeah, it's a great song. Daniela, what about you?
So I have on the 1st position Can You Feel It? And then I have This Place Hotel. And at a 3rd one, I don't know if it counts, but this medley, I love the old songs.
Yeah.
Because why? Because this medley, I just love it. It puts me in such a good mood, and I can sing along, and I know the most of the steps. So I do not know the steps of all songs, but of this medley, you know, there's some signature steps, and I can do that, and it's just great. It's just great.
He always had such a good energy doing those songs, didn't he?
Yeah, and it's also I think the brothers, when they perform, they do these songs and this medley, and I always like to watch them.
Yeah. So Nicole, what was your overall opinion of the book?
Well, I love the book. I try not to think too much about the ghostwriter stuff. I tend to read it thinking that it is his words, even though maybe I just want it to be. But I do. I love all the pictures, especially all the photos. As when I first got it, I didn't have a lot of pictures, so this was all that I used to look through the pictures all the time. But, you know, there's some funny little stories. I love in particular, one of my favourite things about the book is when he's talking about the Motown audition and the detail that he remembers from that day, which, you know, that it must have been, what, 20 years, no, it wouldn't have been 20 years earlier, but 15 years earlier that happened, and he remembered the detail of the conversation he had with Randy's teacher and walking Randy home, and the detail that he remembered with there. It's nice to have those little secret stories, like you sort of how you described it before, like a behind the scenes kind of insight into some of the things that happen. So it's certainly I find it quite an enjoyable read. I think it's nice sometimes to read a book that's not, I don't know, a traditional arty, I can't think of the words I'm wanting, but it just sounds like someone talking. It doesn't sound like a well-constructed story as such. It's just someone and I quite like that about it. So it's one of my favorites.
Betty Lou actually made a point of saying she finds it an easy read, which I guess is kind of what you're saying, and that Michael's primary values didn't change over time, despite other aspects of his career and life evolving very differently. And I think that's true. There's a lot that we read in this book that we've discussed, and we say, that's Michael, that sounds like Michael. And even, years later, 20 years later, that, he was still, he still had a lot of those mindsets. Casey, what about you?
I mean, overall, I did enjoy it. I mean, it does definitely give you some fun little stories and anecdotes, and it tells you a little bit about some of the songs as well. Some details behind it, which was nice. And of course, the pictures are fantastic. I would go back to many of them. I mean, I will agree it is an easy read, but especially for maybe, this is a great, just Michael Jackson collectible, but especially newer fans, it would be a great book to start with.
Yeah.
Before they really dive in, but yeah, I liked it.
Casey, both of you have mentioned the pictures so far. So Casey, what is your favorite, or one of your favorite pictures from the book?
Oh, let me find it. It's from my personal favorite era, which was the bad era.
Yeah. There's so many to choose from.
Oh, come on. There it is. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I love that picture.
See, I'm the same with this one. This is probably one of my favorites. And again, there's no real reason.
It's just a beautiful picture.
Yeah. I just think he looks handsome. He looks happy. Mm-hmm. I love his attire. I've always loved his outfits. I think he looks
the military style.
Yeah, I love it.
I was like that, and then the bad.
Yeah.
We can right there.
Yeah, that's a great.
That's just always been one of my favorite, especially when he took pictures.
Yeah.
They were always a little different, but they were just perfect.
Yeah, even that one behind you, the big one with his arms out. No, the one.
Oh, yeah. That one? Yeah, with the military jacket on.
I think it's the military thing that does it for me.
It does. It gives him a whole different look.
Yeah. Nicole, what was one of your favorite pictures?
I picked two.
Yeah.
Little
this one came up from another fan. They said it. The costume reminded them of Kermit the Frog, and how cute he looked. Yeah.
He just looks so sweet and kind there, and I think it's one of those pictures where I look at that and I go, not much changed. Like he's
not really.
He just, his eyes and his smile is, was still the same, jawline was still the same all the way through. And my absolute favorite, because I am an absolute sucker for Smooth Criminal in the back.
That's a great short film.
Yeah.
Yes.
Smooth Criminal is my favorite, and I look at that picture and in my head I see him look up and wink at me.
Oh, the best bit in the whole video. all of us wanted to be Annie at that point. Right? I mean, she gets kidnapped and stuff, but no one cares. He winks at her, so that's the priority, right?
Yeah.
Daniela, what was your overall view on the book, and you know, what was your favorite picture?
I have to make two, because when I first got hold of the book 1988, I already said that we looked at each other and said, so what? But it's great pictures in there. Yeah. Now, so many years later, knowing so many more things about Michael Jackson, I do have the same as you. I read it and I say, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. And I can read between the lines, and it's a totally different read now than it used to be when I did not know Michael so well. So I'm on the contrary to you, Nicole. I would say to start with this book for fans, no, you have a lot more enjoyment when you know already something, because then you can read the little things. Yeah. Yeah. So as the first book to read, no, I would not say. But definitely enjoyable when you know your stuff. Good. Yeah, and I also said I would not even take that home with me when I moved. So, my favorite picture is this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and this goes all the way back to '88 now. Blast from the past. Yeah, we were 4 girls.
So handsome.
Two Norwegian girls, a French one, and me. Yeah, and we would go and look at these pictures. And we were in college, and he's wearing a college jacket here, basketball or no football jacket. Yeah, and we always said, like, he sits there, and you could, like, from his picture, he sits at a football game, and you would come and you say, is this seat free next to you? And of course he would say yes, and you sit there. Eventually you would start to talk to him, and then he would take his glasses off and let you see these wonderful eyes. And then your imagination can run wild. Whatever happens after that. To keep this family friendly, we go for I go for free.
We'll respect his,
but I think this was the beginning of fan fiction, no? This picture was the beginning of fan fiction.
It was.
And to show you more, I still have this very old T-shirt. It is so thin.
Oh, it's that picture. I did. Yeah, it's actually that picture.
This is this picture. Yeah. No.
Daniela, yeah. You need to do a Steph. This is what Steph does when she gets, you know, a bit excited.
Yeah, we would sit there and talk and look at the pictures and say what could have happened. I mean, keep in mind, Michael is just a few years older than I was, so that was not totally out of.
It was possible.
Yeah, you look at this and you think, oh, I could meet him at a football game.
Yeah.
There, watch
backstage at the concert.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been so. I've really enjoyed it. I mean, like this. I thought this would last 1 to 2 hours. We're hitting 3 hours, which is just absolutely insane. Hopefully, we've kept everyone's attention who's watching. You know, really hope that you've enjoyed it. I've really loved being able to talk at length about this book, and you know, I think that we could probably, you know, keep going. There's so many topics that we haven't managed to discuss, but anyway, maybe we can do like a part 2 at some point. So now I'm going to reveal the answers for the quiz. So at the end, you know, please comment and let me know how many you got out of 10 if you feel comfortable to do that. I won't put these ladies on the spot, but if you want to comment as well on the day, then you can. So number 1, how old is Michael at the time of writing Moonwalk? He was 29. Number 2, what was Joe Jackson's group called? The Falcons. Number 3, what instrument is played at the start of I'll Be There? It was the harpsichord. Number 4, what was coincidental about Blame It on the Boogie? One of the writers of the song was called Michael Jackson, which is just crazy, but true. Number 5, why was this place hotel not named Heartbreak Hotel? It was, of course, because of the famous Elvis Presley hit of the same name, Heartbreak Hotel, so they wanted to give it a different name. Number 6, how many Grammys did Off the Wall win? I know it's a very, very sore subject. It was, of course, 1, which is outrageous, but that's what he got. Number 7, what was the original name for the Off the Wall album? It was Girlfriend. Number 8, what was the title of the song that Michael wrote for Diana Ross? It was Muscles, which of course was also the name of his snake, as he mentions in the book. Number 9, how many copies of Thriller have been sold to date according to the official Guinness World Records? It's 66 million. Although there are debates that it could be over 100 million, but the official number is 66 million. And number 10, what was the title of the Jackson 5's first recorded song? It was, of course, Big Boy. So let me know how you did, how many you got out of 10. So hopefully the demand will be here for next month. I'm going to reveal the book that we will be reading and discussing next month, and I'm super excited about this because as awful as this sounds, as such a fan of Michael, I've never read this book, and I actually didn't know it existed until a couple of months ago via the Michael Jackson Book Club, which really I can't believe that I never knew about it, but I didn't. And I'm really excited to read it because I think it will probably give a more personal insight actually into Michael and his thoughts and his kind of mental process. And it's this one, of course. Dancing the Dream. Hey, you guessed. Oh, there's no one there. You all predicted it.
Yeah.
I think that, look, there's so many books that have been written about him, but I think that it completely makes sense to start with the 2 that he wrote. I'm so excited about reading this. I literally haven't even flicked through the pages. I ordered this, it came a couple of days ago, and I think that this will probably be more revealing about Michael as a person.
Definitely.
You know, from what I hear, it's full of poems and artwork and stuff, and I'm super excited to discuss this. So the watch party for this discussion will be on Sunday the 27th of September, so if you can make a note of that in your diaries. I'll obviously send more information about that at a later date, and I'm going to try and do this without getting tearful, but this quote does make me kind of choke up. I just wanted to end with a final quote from the book, which is actually the very last words that he writes in the book. It's on page 282, and it says, "Often in the past, performers have been tragic figures. A lot of the truly great people have suffered or died because of pressure and drugs, especially liquor. It's so sad. You feel cheated as a fan that you didn't get to watch them evolve as they grew older. One can't help wondering what performances Marilyn Monroe would have put in, or what Jimi Hendrix might have done in the 1980s. A lot of celebrities say they don't want their children to go into show business. I can understand their feelings, but I don't agree with them. If I had a son or daughter, I'd say by all means, be my guest, step right in there. If you want to do it, do it. To me, nothing is more important than making people happy, giving them a release from their problems and worries, helping to lighten their load. I want them to walk away from a performance I've done saying, that was great. I want to go back again. I had a great time. To me, that's what it's all about. That's wonderful. That's why I don't understand when some celebrities say they don't want their kids in the business. I think they say that because they've been hurt themselves. I can understand that. I've been there too. And I just find that so, you know, knowing what we know now and knowing obviously where Michael's life ended up and all of the trauma that he went through, I think it's nice to end on that quote, because it still shows a lot of innocence at that age, you know, and I like reading about an era where he just had no idea of what was coming. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I can also hear like a bit of what is this in English? Oh, it's so late, I cannot have a thought anymore. Healthy, and you know, if people can predict the future, What is this in English? Yeah.
Like a clairvoyant.
It's a bit of this like too, yeah. Mm.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, ladies. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Please comment, let us know whether you have enjoyed it, if you have any suggestions for next time. But yeah, for now we're going to sign off and say thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again next month. So have a good evening, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.